Everybody okay? I was wanting to check, make sure it wasn't too traumatic for us, but learning how to love one another. There was a new minister in a local church and was getting to know people, and he heard the one story about a man in his church who was very wealthy, very successful in his business, but he wasn't giving anything to the church. And he thought, well, let me go talk to him, just see what we can find out. And so he went to the businessman and explained that he's very successful in business. Looks like the Lord has blessed him. Wouldn't he like to give back to the Lord in that regard? And the lapsed minister responded this way: did you know that my mother is ill with extremely expensive medical bills? The minister gulped. Oh, no, I didn't know that. Well, and also, did you know that my brother is blind and unemployed? Minister, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that either. Did you know that my sister's husband died, leaving her broke with 4 kids? The minister was just humiliated. I'm sorry, I had no idea. And the man went on. So, said the member, if I don't give them any money, why would I give any to your church? Let that sink in for just a moment. Well, that's not the golden rule there. That's not how you really love people in that regard. But let's look at what Jesus is talking about, what he's looking for, what he is teaching. It'll be up on our walls. It's in your bulletin if you'd like to follow along. And if you brought your Bible, you go to the front of the line to get your cookie after the service, if you will. But hear this, how Jesus teaches us. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. So concise. But we find Paul the Apostle bringing his commentary in the book of Romans, chapter 13. He expresses it this way: let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. The commandments: you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and what other command there may be, are summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. And may God add power to the reading of this word, that it confronts us today in new ways to inspire us to rise up to the need of Christ's call upon us. Loving one another. Sometimes that can be a tricky business, can't it? I like the way Linus put it in the comic strip Peanuts by Charles Schulz, remember? Linus just cries out to the world, I love mankind. It's the people I can't stand. Sometimes making lofty, broad claims can be all right, but when it gets down to the one on one nitty gritty doing it, that can be a difficult story sometimes. I think that's why we need to hear Jesus' call upon our life. Well, what he's saying is nothing new. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Many cultures taught that. Many previous religious teachers taught it. Jesus never claimed that it was original with them. I think what he's saying, I'll share with this story. You've heard this line many times before, and I want you to know it's a good idea. If we just learn how to practice this, we've got a lot of things covered. Jesus is reflecting a teaching back in the law. Moses himself wrote this in the book of Leviticus. Leviticus 19. If you ever try to read through the Bible in one year, you've taken up that challenge. Usually you get through Genesis, well, Exodus is good. Numbers, that's usually where people cash it in, numbering all the tribes. And then Leviticus, forget about it. It can be a tough road. But if you want to read Leviticus, make sure you get to chapter 19. Don't skip it. That's the heart and the gold of the book of Leviticus. But here's some of the words that it says here: how to be a Christian community, how God's people come together, and how they behave in this Christian community. Moses speaks, do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbor fairly. In God's community, there's no double standards. There's no some are better than some others. Everyone counts. Everyone's on the same level. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. This is firm teaching, the heart of God's community. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord. I love that reading the writings in the Bible. And God throws it in often. I am the Lord. And I see he's teaching two things there. I think the first lesson is this: I am the Lord, not you. You are not God here, all right? Let's get that clear. God is God. The second thing God is trying to communicate here is God is present and paying close attention. God is the one that cares for us. God is the one that can bring this community together and hold it together. Moses goes on writing, do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly so you will not share in their guilt. If another is doing something that's not right, you've got to put your hands up and say, no, I don't want to participate in that. Today starts football. First day of football, actually first Sunday of football. I guess we had a game start already, but Bill, I won't get into that one. That was Seattle and Green Bay, and I meant to bring it up at prayer time. I'm sorry what happened with that one. But today, NFL football, something that's interesting. These are nationally televised. They're seen around the world. Our troops see these games in foreign countries. And there's a few guys that are on that field wearing striped shirts, and they give them a whistle and a yellow flag. And they can stop the world for a few seconds. They see somebody off sides, poor sportsmanlike conduct, whatever it may be. They blow that whistle, it's loud. They throw that yellow flag in the air and call the penalty. And they've got power for about 5 seconds until they get everything worked out. Well, maybe we need that in our communities. We need some people to walk around with whistles and yellow flags and blow the whistle and throw the flag. No, that's a foul. You must not behave that way. We've got to have a penalty on this one. Somehow to bring us together, to bring us in order. That's something that Leviticus is getting at here. What God is trying to say. God's community is important, and it's worth protecting. It's worth cultivating. It's worth building, and it's worth making it strong. It's worth our effort. It's worth our time to make it strong, to make it important. When a church functions in such a way where there's strong love going on, where people love each other and it doesn't matter what they get in return, they just love anyway. They share kind words, they share encouragement, they build each other up. Everyone in that church thinks, gosh, I'm having a hard week. If I could just get to church, I think I'll be okay. Because there's people there that'll help me, build me back up again, put me back together again. And that becomes an irresistible place. People can't be kept away. They want into a place like that. They want to be a part of that. Because there's nowhere else in the world where you can find that. You're not going to find it in nightclubs. You're not going to find it in workforces. You're not going to find it in any of these other places. But in the church are people that are seeking God's will. The Holy Spirit is in our midst, moving us, inspiring us, protecting this unity, calling us forward to a better lifestyle, calling us on by the power of the Spirit. Paul explains it. Don't let any debt remain. Pay your debts, take care of those things, but make sure you have this one debt that carries over. And that's your debt to love one another, to care about others. If you do that, you have fulfilled the law. You've done everything God requires, simply just to show love to one another. And it's the hallmark of the Christian community. If you read the New Testament, this is the book of the church, defining the church, and the words are strong. In the book of Philippians, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourselves. Look not to your own interests, but of each of you to the interests of the others. In Romans, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. 1 Thessalonians, now about your love for one another, we do not need to write to you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love one another. Hebrews, keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. And the word goes on and on. It's the hallmark of what the Christian community is like. It's what it looks like. It's how it's recognized as a powerful force in this world. Aristides, who wrote a long time ago, was a secular writer, worked for Rome, and reported directly to the emperor. And he would write to the emperor about different reports, what's happening in the empire. Today we have emails that can be done quickly, but back then they had no such thing. So they'd have trusted reporters, who sometimes were called historians, and they would write the reports. And Aristides, who's not a Christian, but wrote about Christians, that's what makes him interesting, because we have an outside source looking in. And he writes about what he saw. That's what makes him interesting. Well, he had these words to say as he wrote to the Emperor Hadrian, talking about those Christians, what they are. He said, they love one another. They never fail to help widows. They save orphans from those who would hurt them. If they have something, they give freely to the one who has nothing. If they see a stranger, they take him home. They're happy, and they treat him as though he's a real brother. Now, they don't consider themselves brothers in the usual sense, way we think about it, but brothers instead through what they call the Spirit, who is God with them. That's how the Christians were recognized. Aristides saw that in his report to the Roman emperor. That's how you recognize something interesting here. This is what Jesus said. Jesus, in the upper room before his own passion, told his disciples, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another, if you show care. It's the golden rule. Loving one another and be aggressive about it. Be even offensive if need be, to love and to care for one another. You know, some people, I've seen it, they get that golden rule backwards. Have you ever seen this one? They've got it wrong. They interpret it this way. See, that's how people are supposed to treat me, the way I expect to be treated. Did you see the misreading there? That's the way people are supposed to treat me. See, they're getting it wrong. But the problem is you've got yourself back to the center again. That's not Jesus' point at all. It's not me first. It's me second or me last altogether. The emphasis falls upon the first part of the teaching. Do unto others. That's how you do it. Do as you'd have them do to you is your measuring rule, so to speak, how you gauge all of that. But you look at others. Back in the 70s, Robert Ringer wrote a book, Looking Out for Number One. That book's been misinterpreted in many ways. I'll rise up to Ringer's defense. He was talking about looking out for your own interests, but he wasn't writing about narcissism. Didn't mean at the expense of anybody else, but it got interpreted that way. He's often attributed as the one that started the me first generation. Look out for yourself and don't worry about anybody else. Just get what's coming to you. Marketing slogans picked it up. You only go around once in life. Go for the gusto, whatever gusto is. Did anybody ever figure out what gusto is? But you're supposed to reach out for that. But it's all the me first. And then following right behind that came what's known as the age of stress and depression. Looking out for ourselves, all the energies came inward. All the energies were looking at ourselves, and we suffered. It's a unique thing about human nature, a total paradox. If you want to build up your energy, then give your energies away. Those that are always trying to pull their energy into themselves, that's how you deplete your energies. I've noticed the happiest people that I've ever met in this world who are truly happy were always concerned about what they do for other people. Larry Allen, he's a hero of faith in my book. I will always treasure my experience with him. Many of you have received his calligraphy cards. He sent all those with deep love. I'd go see him in his final months. His health had dropped so bad. He had to be on oxygen all the time, and I'd visit him in his apartment. And just walking across the room would just wear him out. And if anybody had the right to grumble, there you go. I would grumble right along with him. You're right, it's hard. But he never did. Never did talk about how bad it is. But he always asked me this. It never failed. I'd go visit him. Before I could get away, he'd always say, who can I help this week? Who needs some encouragement? Who can I send a card to that they'd really appreciate? And my first thought was, oh, Larry, just worry about yourself. But I talked to his daughter, and she said, oh, keep it going. That's what keeps him alive, that he has purpose to care for other people. But he's always a happy man. When I go visit him, I always have a few names in my head. I said, I'm glad you asked. I got a few names for you that could use one of your cards to lift him up. But Larry was a very happy man. And that happiness was so governed by the way he had his energies going out. It was never what's in it for me. It's what's in it for other people. He surprised me at his funeral. We talked about his funeral before he passed away. One of the things he said is that he wanted me to play the guitar. I'd forgotten all about that. And he worked out the ceremony and said, by the way, don't forget to bring your guitar. And it was at the cemetery down in Sunland. Had about 100 people out there in the open. And I brought my guitar and we sang what he wanted to sing. I'll Fly Away. And I said, we're going to have a funeral service, New Orleans style. Here we go. And everybody sang loud. It was a joyful ceremony, God's son coming home. But he was happy. He discovered that happiness, even his death, in his way he could give to other people. Carl Menninger is another man I admire deeply from Kansas. Any Kansas people here? Here's one of your heroes right here, Carl Menninger, good man, Christian psychologist. He wrote a lot of good books, and I appreciate him. At a time when everyone was writing books about guilt is a bad thing, to pretend you don't have guilt, don't think about it, and try to blame others for your problems. And Carl Menninger wrote a great book, Whatever Became of Sin. His point was, are you feeling guilty? It might be because you're guilty. You might need to look a little deeper into your heart. But he was asked in an interview, if you knew a person was heading for a nervous breakdown, if they only had moments to survive with their soul intact, what would you suggest? Do you have a secret cure for that kind of situation? What is it that could jumpstart their life again and get them happy once more? Well, Dr. Menninger replied this way in the interview. Well, I would tell them this. Make an appointment with a psychologist as soon as possible and start talking about it. And after that, here's what you do. You lock your door, get out of your house, get out of your house, then lock your door. Got that backwards, pardon me. Lock your door, go across the railroad tracks, and help someone in need. That's his cure. Stop thinking about yourself. Stop worrying about yourself. Start thinking about others. Get those energies going outward. As we look outward, how can I help other people? That's where the paradox comes in. That's where our soul comes alive. That's where the inner strength rises up. Stop demanding what's in it for me and start doing what's in it for you. It not only helps the community, it not only helps the people, it helps you. It's a way to be healthy. It's a way to find the real happiness that you're seeking.